Prince William and Catherine just handed King Charles a ruthless decree about Queen Camilla's future, and when the king finally processed what his son was telling him, he sat completely paralyzed in total silence. This wasn't a petty family spat leaked to the tabloids. William and Catherine were drawing a lethal line around the next reign, and Camilla was standing completely alone on the cold side of it. Before that high-stakes meeting ended, Charles heard one brutal sentence that caused the entire 70-year-old Queen Mother blueprint to collapse around him. Before we unpack this explosive palace trap, take 2 seconds right now to hit that subscribe button. It genuinely supports the channel and keeps you plugged into the raw, unfiltered truth behind royal power plays. The secret execution went down at Windsor Castle on Thursday, August 13th, 2026, at 6:25 in the evening. King Charles walked into a private sitting room, believing he was attending a dry administrative briefing on future transition logistics diaries, staffing, and harmless protocol. Instead, he found William and Catherine waiting in heavy silence. Sitting directly between them was a single cream folder stamped with 4 devastating words: "The next reign household." Charles sat down, looking between his son and daughter-in-law. William didn't reach for the folder. Catherine did. That single movement flipped the temperature in the room instantly. It signaled to Charles that this wasn't William acting alone. Catherine was the central architect. When Charles read the first page, the protected future he had assumed for Camilla disintegrated line by line. There were no emotional attacks or demands for her exile. The wording was far colder: one sovereign, one working household, one center of royal authority when the next reign begins. It sounded administrative until the brutal constitutional reality sank in. If Charles died before Camilla, there would be no automatic second royal court built around his widow, no inherited palace machinery, no guaranteed press office, no permanent staff, and no assumption that Clarence House would continue as a separate headquarters. Camilla could remain family, but the monarchy after Charles belonged exclusively to the next king and queen. This trap hadn't even originated with William. 3 days earlier, inside Kensington Palace, Catherine was reviewing historical royal transitions. When she reached 1952, the year King George VI died, and his widow became Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, she froze. The Queen Mother moved into Clarence House, maintaining massive public visibility, staff, and leverage for decades. Catherine asked her team if Camilla would automatically inherit that exact setup. When advisors admitted a surviving consort could maintain a separate court, Catherine recognized the fatal threat. A second household meant competing advisors and press offices right beside the new sovereign, a dangerous second center of gravity. When William hesitated to strip Camilla's future, fearing public backlash, Catherine dropped the ultimate checkmate: make the rule apply to her, too. If William died first, Catherine would surrender her own right to a second court when George became king. By 6:31 that evening, King Charles reached the bottom of the first page. He looked up, the crushing weight of the document sinking in. Charles looked at his son, his voice thick with disbelief. "This is about Camilla." William answered with restraint, "It affects Camilla." Charles insisted it was the exact same thing. Before William could soften the blow, Catherine interjected with a voice like ice, "No, it isn't." That sharp response unsettled Charles instantly. He turned back to the paper, reading the law. A surviving consort retains dignity, but no office, residence, or staff continues by automatic right. Charles stopped at one line, asking the question William anticipated: what happens to Clarence House? The heavy pause carried decades of royal history. Clarence House was the ultimate fortress of a widowed queen's power, where the Queen Mother reigned supreme for 50 years. To Charles, that proved a widow didn't vanish when her husband died. But William looked dead into his father's eyes and shattered that assumption. Nothing is automatic. Not the house, not the office, not the staff, not the institutional role. Each word landed like a physical punch across the table. Charles leaned back, the conversation turning painfully personal. He asked the haunting question, what happens if he isn't there to protect her? The king vanished, leaving only a desperate husband. William's tone softened, but his boundary didn't move. She won't need protection from us. Charles asked what they called this cold maneuver. William answered, flinching, a boundary. Charles turned to Catherine, expecting silence. Instead, she stepped forward. It applies to me too. Charles stared at her, completely paralyzed. Catherine explained that if William died early and George became king, she would accept the exact same restriction. She would never expect George to build a court around his mother or demand a voice beside his throne. Then, Catherine delivered the sentence that froze the king. My son should never have to inherit my authority as well as his father's crown. Charles was defenseless. He couldn't accuse them of targeting Camilla when Catherine had just sacrificed her own future. Defeated, Charles requested Camilla hear it directly. At 7:10 p.m., Camilla entered and sensed the trap. William laid out the rule. One sovereign, one household, no second court. Camilla's face hardened, meaning yours. William corrected her, meaning the king's. Camilla turned to Catherine. And me? Catherine replied, you remain family. Camilla pushed back, but not royal. Catherine didn't flinch. That is not what was said. Panicking, Camilla looked at Charles. So the moment you're gone, I disappear? William cut in. No. Family is not the same as government. Camilla went completely still. For decades, her public identity and royal survival had been meticulously built around service beside Charles' engagements, staff, press briefings, and official appearances. The proposal didn't erase her past, but it ruthlessly refused to guarantee that the massive structure supporting her would survive Charles's death. It was a terrifying, quiet loss of absolute power. Desperate, Camilla looked across the table at Catherine. But Catherine's face offered no smug victory. She understood the brutal cost, having just placed her own neck on the exact same chopping block. When Catherine explained she would surrender all independent power if William died and George took the throne, Camilla's resistance crumbled. Catherine wasn't demanding a sacrifice she intended to sidestep herself. Still searching for a loophole, Camilla asked if this rule was written only for her, or if a future king could simply reverse it. William didn't answer with words. He flipped the page, revealing a second classified sheet titled The One Court Principle. Beneath that heading was a list of names that made the scale of this execution undeniable. This was a permanent succession rule. Catherine's name was on the list. The future spouse of Prince George was on the list. Even Princess Charlotte's future was strictly bound by it. When a reign ends, the institutional household dies with it. A sovereign could invite a former consort to appear, but authority would never be inherited by automatic right. Camilla read the page in total silence. Her defense collapsed. What Camilla didn't know was that William had taken this principle to Princess Anne days earlier. Anne had given a brutal verdict. The next king had to be allowed to be king. The meeting fractured. Camilla rose first, completely defeated, and Catherine followed her into the corridor. The heavy oak doors clicked shut, leaving father and son alone. Charles was no longer interested in talking about Camilla. He looked at William and asked the darkest question of the night. Had William truly thought about what this ruthless rule would do to Catherine? Could William stomach his wife stepping away from the crown without resentment? William looked toward the door and delivered an answer that chilled Charles to the bone, no. But she is. The following morning, on Friday, August 14th, the execution was finalized. William and Catherine reviewed the emotionless wording. No mention of Diana. No personal attacks on Camilla. Just the lethal boundary. The next reign will begin with one sovereign, one court, and one working household. William signed first and slid the parchment. Catherine read the sentence, picked up the pen, and signed right beside him. 2 signatures, one absolute decision. The era of the Queen Mother was dead. But one explosive question remains, if there is strictly only one court. Who will control Clarence House?